How's it going, folks? How's it going? All right, so we got some music playing. We're just gonna go ahead and turn that off real quick. Let me know in the comments if you are through the ad block, if you are in the workshop and you're seeing my face, hearing my voice, and seeing my screen. Yeah, I'm excited to start as well. How's it going, 404? I heard that you met some MLHers in person this week, earlier this week. Happy to hear it. Happy to see it. All right. Okay. Looks like folks are getting in here. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a link in the chat. Want y'all to get registered and checked in for this event, for this workshop. Pardon. Let me just go ahead and type it out. API 125 MongoDB 101. All right, perfect. Here we go. Okay, folks. So my name is Rosendo from MLH. I'm really happy to be here. Obviously, if you know about MongoDB already, if you've done this workshop before, please let me know in the chat if it's your first time learning about MongoDB. Same thing. Let me know in the chat because I want to know who I'm actually speaking to. I want to make sure that everyone's getting value out of their time here. Once again, really excited to be kicking off Global Hack Week API with a awesome workshop. I think one of my favorite databases to work with, and just in general, one of my favorite technologies to work with, MongoDB. I think if you saw my message in Discord, you would have seen me say that having a database or learning how to utilize databases and manage databases is actually a really integral part of building your own APIs. And understanding them is really important as well in terms of leveraging APIs on the front end. So definitely a workshop that I think is very appropriate for this week's theme. The goal for today is going to be getting everyone here comfortable with using MongoDB and understanding exactly what MongoDB is. And we're going to do an in-depth explanation of some of its features and capabilities, as well as doing a live demo later on. So before we get into all that, let me just jump into the agenda very quickly. First, obviously, is going to be an introduction to MongoDB and the document model. Then we're going to touch on data modeling with MongoDB. Then we're going to do a brief intro into CRUD operations. If you don't know what CRUD is, I will explain it later. Then I'm going to show you all how to set up your first database and query it using JavaScript on MongoDB Atlas. Then we're going to review MongoDB's database as a service, and then we're going to cap it off with some Q&A. And obviously, we're going to talk about the databases and the services, but we're also going to talk about the skills badges that you can be earning this week as well. Just by being here at this workshop, you'll probably be prepared to tackle at least a couple of those skills badges challenges that we have up on the Global Hack Week website. All right, let's see here. Looking in the chat, no questions so far. All right, so let's go ahead and kick things off here. Let's get into it. So why MongoDB? Does anyone know why MongoDB is called MongoDB? And I'll wait for a little bit. If you have an answer for it, just drop it in chat. If you've seen this workshop before, you know the answer, but do let me know. Why do you think MongoDB is called MongoDB? All right, and that's fine. If people are too shy to participate, it's not required, but it is highly encouraged. The founders of MongoDB actually set out to design a database specifically for developers, prioritizing scalability, high performance, and flexibility to manage humongous amounts of data. So yeah, there it is. They took the word humongous, shortened it to Mongo, and then obviously added DB at the end of it for database. But really, why MongoDB? Meaning there are so many different databases that you can choose from when developing modern applications. So why choose this one? And the answer is with MongoDB, you really get a lot of the same foundational capabilities you will expect from any production database, meaning you'll get ACID transactions, query optimization, comprehensive indexing, and enterprise security. Plus, you'll also get something called the document model. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to explore what that is, how it's so flexible, and all of the benefits it's going to have for you as a hacker and building out your own applications. So when you're working with any database, it's really important to understand how the data is being stored, because this is going to have a huge impact on your data security, the way you're able to scale your application, and just the overall performance of your database. So when you're using MongoDB's flexible document model, you can actually move quickly during your development without having to sacrifice any of the robust features that you would need for a production level application, or even like an MVP at a hackathon, for instance. So this is an overview of MongoDB's hierarchy for organizing data. In this first section, we're going to cover documents and collections, and we're going to start with documents. So the documents are actually the bedrock of organizing data in MongoDB. They typically store information about an object and any of its related metadata. And the way documents are stored, the way the documents store data is by using field value pairs. So it's just very similar to key value pairs. If you're familiar with JSON, you're going to see how some of this kind of breaks down in a couple slides from now. But for now, just think of it as a name and then an actual like piece of data or information associated to it. The values, they can be a variety of different data types. It could include strings, numbers, dates, arrays, objects, blobs, like really anything that you would expect to see inside of a database. So traditional relational databases, they store data in tables. So if you were to think of an entity like a car, each of its attributes, like the wheels, the car lights, the doors, the color of it, the model, the year it was made, etc., would have to be stored stored separately in different columns. But MongoDB stores data in JSON-like objects, like I mentioned before, and this gives it a very flexible schema. So JSON is just a lightweight data interchange format, and it's easy for humans to read and write, and easy for machines to parse and generate. It's called, I think, Java. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it stands for JavaScript Object Notation. At any rate, let's look at the example in this animation. You can notice how this document can represent an entire object or entity, and in this case, it's going to be a car. And in it, we're going to have a few fields. You're going to have the car ID, and you'll see that pop up in a moment. You could have the wheels, the car lights, and the paint color. But if we wanted, we could easily add more. We could add things like the engine type, the car brand, the year it was built, anything that you really wanted to add. You could just add it directly into that JSON object, all or nearly all of the information with about an object or an entity inside of your collection can be stored or contained in a single document. So a group of documents is contained within a collection. I mentioned collection earlier. It's going to be stored in a collection. So think of the collection as essentially where like a table inside of a relational database. In MongoDB, it's called the collection. So for example, the document from the previous slide could be from a collection called cars, which contains information about different car models. So you could have different cars inside of the different car models inside of the cars collection, and the car models would be inside of documents. And you could have documents that have sedans, coupes, convertibles, SUVs, Teslas, anything that you could think of, any types of cars that you could think of, they will be contained all in the same collection. All those documents will be there and contained in that collection. All right. Any idea about attendance for this session? Yeah, I've got the link scrolling across the bottom. Definitely use that link to get registered and checked in so that you can, get credit for being here. And now that I've talked about collections, which are essentially tables, a group of collections is housed by a database. So inside of a database, you're going to have a lot of different collections or tables. And then inside of those collections or tables, you would have a lot of documents that are all comprising your database. So something to note, typically, when we talk about a database, we're referring to a database management system like MongoDB or PostgreSQL or whatever it is you're using. But in the context of MongoDB architecture, a database is simply a group of collections. Now, we're not going to get into the specifics about nodes and clusters today, but as you can imagine, a node is comprised of a group of databases, and then a cluster is further comprised by a group of a cluster is further comprised by a group of nodes. So now that we understand the document model, let's jump into a bit of data modeling. So we've talked about MongoDB's flexible schema design, but you're probably wondering exactly how to model a schema for your particular application. So that's really one of the cool aspects of MongoDB's platform. It really depends on what you're going to build, since document databases are capable of expressing data relationships in more nuanced ways than a relational database could. So that means that there are going to be various considerations when developing your schema design. And really, like, we're going to just jump right into all of those things right now. I highly recommend asking yourself these three questions when you start to model your data. So the first thing is your application read or write heavy? And this is going to influence whether you want to optimize for query performance or for write efficiency. Reading a database means just like taking information from the database and then displaying it to someone. And then writing to a database means just like putting different things into a database. So inserting more information into a database. The second thing that we should understand is how frequently data is being accessed together. So keep in mind the previous slides that I showed you where like I was like basically showing you how the document model works. You're also going to have to keep in mind that MongoDB allows us to embed related data into a single document. And this can really reduce the amount of queries needed for you to actually get that data out to your end users or display it to someone or AKA read that data. So the third thing we need to think about is the performance requirements. And this is going to influence various decisions about things like indexing, sharding, or whether to embed or reference related data. We're going to go into indexing in a bit as well. So make sure you stick around for that part if you don't know what indexing is. And then finally, what you're going to want to consider is scalability. So you need to understand how your data is going to grow over time, how you take your schema design and choose the one that's going to accommodate that growth. So understanding your end goal prior to jumping in and modeling your data, it's really going to help you unlock a lot of the benefits that MongoDB currently has, especially since proper schema design is probably one of the most critical aspects of deploying a really fast, scalable, and easy to use database. So I know it's tempting, especially when you're in a time crunch, to go in and be like, I'm just going to go in and just like build a database willy nilly. I think if you do take these principles into mind as you're building your database, is going to definitely benefit you in the future, especially as you're like continuing to grow the application that you originally built. All right. So at this point, I know we've seen a lot of differences between relational ways of doing things and the MongoDB document way of doing things, but bear with me. I'm not being repetitive for no reason. This is very important in terms of making the distinction between MongoDB and other database services that you could potentially choose. So when you're designing a relational schema, developers will model their schema independent of queries. So this requires normalization or the processes of splitting up your data into different tables so you don't duplicate data. In the relational example, you can see here that let me just see where we're at. In the relational example, you can see here that the user data is split into separate tables and it can be joined together using foreign keys, or in this case, it's the user ID column of the professionals and cars table. So let's take a look at the MongoDB schema now on the right side. Uh, it works differently because there really isn't a formal process or hard and fast rules for how you need to structure your schema. It's important to keep in mind that when you're designing your schema, the only thing that matters is that you design one that will work well for your particular application. So you can see that instead of having our data in various documents or collections, we're actually just embedding our data into arrays and objects within the user object. So this allows us to make a really simple query to pull all of that data together for our application. And basically, what that means is we're accessing data and we're storing data that is accessed frequently together in the same object in order to make your database more efficient. So I've said the word embedding quite a bit. So now let's quickly just go over what embedding is versus referencing. So the choice between embedding and referencing, it's going to depend on the relationships within your data. So there are going to be four different options and they're up on the screen here. Embedding on the one side of the relationship, embedding on the many side of the relationship. And then similarly for referencing, you can reference on the one side of the relationship and reference on the many side of the relationship. And we're going to see what that means exactly as we progress through these slides here. So first things first, it's possible to reference on both sides, but it's less common, so we won't focus on it today. I just want to let you know it was a possibility, but for now, let's dig into the embedding on the one side. For one-to-one relationships, we can embed the related data directly within the parent document. So this keeps the related data together and simplifies queries. And by embedding, I mean, I'm literally just putting all of that data that inside of a specific document, I'm putting additional data into there because I know that that's going to be accessed frequently together. So for example, here the attributes for a product can be embedded as an array within the product document. Here, the many attributes are embedded within the one product. So this is embedding on the one side. Then you have embedding on the many side. So this is for one-to-many relationships, and embedding is the preferred approach to keep that data that is accessed together, stored together, as I mentioned frequently up until this point. So in this case, the one product is embedded within each of the many review documents. So here it's a website where people leave reviews about specific products, and then that product is then embedded onto each of those reviews as they come into the database. So even though this could lead to data duplication, it may be beneficial in some scenarios, specifically when you want to basically grab all of the reviews that are related to a specific product. Adding millions of reviews into a single object for into a single like product document is going to be a little bit cumbersome. So having it done this way is going to make your database a little bit more efficient. Like I said, these things are not hard and fast rules. You can definitely pick and choose the things that you want to do with your data as they pertain to the particular application that you're building. So let's take a look at referencing. You can use referencing on the one side of the relationship as well. So in this case, each review document has a unique identifier, the review ID, and then the product document contains an array of these review IDs referring to the review documents. So if necessary, you can join the data from the products and reviews collections using these IDs. And the reason that this is like something that you may want to do is because maybe the reviews are incredibly large. So those like basically if you embed those reviews into the product document, it's going to make that document incredibly long. So instead of embedding the entire review, what you do is you reference a review ID inside of your product document in order to make things a little bit more I guess cleaner, and also not as labor like not as like it'll basically simplify the way that the document looks when someone's actually taking a look at it on the back end. And then finally, we have the referencing on the many side of the relationship. And here, each review document has a product ID used to refer to the product document. So it's essentially just the same thing that we said with the one side, but instead of putting the review ID inside of the product document, you have the product ID inside of the review document. All right, let's take a look at your questions here. Is there a way to know? Is there a way to know if we should use relational database management systems versus non-relational? It really depends on the way that you want to grow your application and how quickly you want to be able to access your data. So if you have an application, for instance, where you know that data associated to specific collections are going to be expanding vertically, you're going to want to use something that's non-relational, because with the relational database, what ends up happening is you're going to end up having to take a table and then add a new column to it. And then in those columns, you're going to have to backfill some of the empty columns, make sure that basically there's going to be missing information inside of your relational database table. If your data is constantly growing and changing, if your data is going to remain relatively static, I know that a lot of like financial institutions, for instance, they're going to want to use relational databases because the rigidity of the rules that you need to have in place in order to put new data and read data from those types of relational databases are going to be more beneficial. But if your data is constantly changing, you're going to want to do something that's non-relational. What is the relational database equivalent of embedding? It would be exactly what I mentioned. You would basically have a table, and then you would take that table and you would add a new column to it. And then basically your entire database is going to be down while you're adding that new column to that table. So that's why, like, embedding is not really the best way to go with a relational database. That's why people would just spin up a new table with like whatever additional information they wanted to add, and then have like a reference to a user ID or a foreign key, something of that to that effect, instead of like having to take down an entire database, and then instead of having to take down an entire table and then add a new column to it, they are just going to create a new table altogether and then connect the information using a foreign key or a reference ID. In what content in what context, pardon, can we use relational and non-relational database? I think I kind of covered that earlier. There are a lot of different contexts that you can utilize it in. Like I said, you could build out APIs with it. I started out with that. I think that's a great way of using a database, whether it's relational or non-relational. Yeah, ton of different applications for databases. And all right, let's see. Referencing. Okay. Referencing on the many is embedding, but only the identifier. So when you're referencing on the many, so basically when you're referencing on the many side, what you're doing is like we talked about the product ID. You're putting the product ID into you're referencing it. I'm sorry, you're embedding it into the different reviews for that particular product. So let's say like Tom said, "Oh, you know, this chair is very comfortable," and then Mary said, "Oh, this chair is very uncomfortable." Those are going to be two different reviews, and then the chair in question is going to be embedded into that document where that review is contained as an ID. So it could be like the chair is like maybe ID like CH1 or something like that. That CH1 ID is going to be the actual product is going to be embedded. If we were referencing, we would be using the ID. Pardon. But yeah, like that's the general idea. You're It doesn't necessarily have to be just the identifier when you're embedding. When you're embedding data, you're actually putting like the entire field value pair into the existing document. Whereas in referencing, you're only putting in a like an ID, a reference ID. All right. Can you say maybe when to implement both side referencing? I say referencing because I think it's I think this is more used in general. Nevertheless, by both sides, I mean to do referencing in both the product and the reviews. So it really depends. If the data that you want to embed is very large, is very like cumbersome, you may want to just reference the ID instead of actually going in and embedding all of that data into a document. Whereas if it's something just like the name of a product, like chair, and then it's like the like like I don't know, armchair. Like that's like, and then there's a review for it. You could just easily embed that because it's literally a single field value pair, and then you could still like you still be able to query that data by joining those two documents. So it's really up to like what data you're actually referencing or embedding. I would say like the size of it and how much of that data exists is probably going to guide you in terms of how you're actually embedding and referencing, or whether you're actually embedding or referencing. Okay. Is it possible to use both relational and non-relational DBMS or database management systems on a single system? If yes, how do you manage it? Yeah, you can. You can. I mean, there are many different ways to do it. You would probably need to have some sort of middleware in order to have like the data from one database and the data from another database to connect to one another. So that's going to be that's probably going to be difficult. But yes, I don't see why it wouldn't be possible. It would just depend on what your actual use case is. I would try to figure out why I'm doing that first rather than going ahead and trying it out just for fun. Yeah, try to think of why it is that you would do that. But I do believe that it's possible. There are applications that use many different types of databases for different things. So maybe security is something that you're looking for, or maybe data consistency is something that you're looking for. So definitely something. It'll just depend on what your use case is. I think so nowadays, as there are different ORMs, so if we use any database, it wouldn't affect the app performance until we are scaling to billions. Yeah, I mean that could be the case. Like, there are like a lot of databases are very quick and efficient these days. I think what you're going to want to take into consideration is, why are you learning a specific database technology? Why do you want to basically learn about MongoDB? And like the answer is that it's one of the most prevalent databases being used currently. So maybe you're not building your own startup. Maybe it's like, you're just building applications so that you could learn how to code, or just learn about tech in general and just software engineering in general, or even data engineering. The reason that it's beneficial for you to learn MongoDB is because it's already very prevalent within the industry. It's going to make your skill set very applicable to a large swath of employers that are going to want you to know how to utilize like the databases that they're already using in production. So that's one thing to take into consideration, but I totally get this point. This is my first time learning MongoDB. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Are foreign keys and relational DBMS different from reference IDs that you showed? They I think in theory they basically behave the same way and they sort of do the same thing, right? Like you want people to, you know, like the reason you have an ID is so that you don't have to go in and embed like an entire document into another document. So it is sort of the same way. Like foreign keys inside of the main difference is that foreign keys in a relational database are mandatory in a lot of instances, whereas in a non-relational database, you don't necessarily need them. So possible analogy would be set operations like union, intersection, different. Okay. I may be jumping in like mid conversation there. There are a ton of questions here. I just want to make sure I get through all of them. How many documents might be in the back end for a typical small application? It seems like it could get very cumbersome. So it really depends. I'm going to show y'all the like how to spin up a cluster and then create a database and then add a collection. And basically, you're going to see that you could have as little as one document inside of an entire collection, and you could also have like thousands of documents or millions of documents inside of a specific collection. The reason you use a DBMS like MongoDB is so that you can manage all of those things. And while yes, it could become very cumbersome, obviously the more data you have, the more cumbersome it will be. Making sure that you choose the correct product is going to help you in the future. So basically, you're just trying to future-proof yourself. If you're starting out with just one document, or I'm saying, like, yeah, if you're just starting out with one document with one field value pair inside of it, you could use any database. But if you are thinking that your database is going to grow to the millions, you want to make sure that you're picking an option that is going to allow you to scale that way. All right. Okay. Will we be learning to use Mongoose? We're not going to go into Mongoose today. It's going to be specifically MongoDB, and then we'll be leveraging it programmatically using JavaScript. All right. Whew. Answered a lot of your questions. All right, let's get back into it. Here we go. The many-to-many relationship. So you can either embed or reference depending on your requirement. I'm sorry, I forgot that there was like one final slide in this section. I should have done this one before answering your questions. But yes, you have many-to-many relationships. You can either embed or reference depending on your requirements, obviously. It's also possible to use a combination of embedding and referencing, but we won't really be covering that today. So I just wanted to show y'all that this is definitely something that's possible. If you're curious, however, you could definitely check out the MongoDB documentation. It'll show you everything about embedding or referencing on the many-to-many side. All right. So now that we have a better understanding of what embedding and referencing is, let's talk about what MongoDB Atlas and MongoDB Compass are. So first, to start, let's focus on the operational capabilities in MongoDB Atlas. So in case you're not familiar with MongoDB Atlas and you've used maybe MongoDB locally, MongoDB Atlas is basically the cloud version of MongoDB, but it also adds like additional features. It's basically a data platform where you can do everything with your data. And what Atlas provides, it's a suite of services, and you could streamline the development of cloud-based applications. So whatever your needs might be with these tools, you can really just like focus on building unique features rather than having to go in there and really be in the weeds of managing your database infrastructure. Since it's a database as a service, Atlas also automates and enhances processes for database management, including deployment, monitoring, backup and restoration, archiving. Some of this stuff is not going to be immediately relevant to you, but I think it's good to know in case you're, like you do plan on going into software engineering as a career and you encounter some of these concepts. This is what MongoDB Atlas is really good for. So it does it all really. Along with having a set of robust and built-in security features, it's something, even if you're just starting out, it's something that you don't have to worry too much about, because it's not something like, especially if security is not your primary concern or even your background or your skill set, it's not really something you have to worry too much about when you're using a MongoDB Atlas, because the built-in features are already very secure. So on top of that, Atlas also provides built-in replication for all of your database deployments. So this means that your data is actually stored on more than one server. So there's a lot of redundancy, which means there's going to be more availability of your data in the event of any disruptions, or if your database crashes, there's a backup of it already in existence. So you don't have to go in and basically, try to figure out how you're going to repopulate all of that data you've already put into your database. So if you want to sign up for MongoDB Atlas, go to mlh.link/GHW 1125-MongoDB, and that's going to get you your free MongoDB Atlas account. And I'm going to show y'all how to use that account a little bit later. MongoDB Compass is going to be the graphical user interface for your databases. So this is great if you don't really like using the CLI and you want to see all of your databases, your collections, your databases, your collections, and your documents all kind of like displayed to you in person. It's really good for that. It's also a great way to create aggregation pipelines, and you could share access with your database with other people using a URI, or maybe you want to query your database using Compass's built-in AI features. This gives you the opportunity to do all that. And yeah, the last one is the MongoDB AI chatbot. I said, if you wanted to learn a little bit more about the many-to-many relationship referencing or embedding, I said, go to the MongoDB documentation. And if you don't know where to start, there's a really nifty MongoDB AI chatbot inside of the documentation, page, and it just lives there. And it's basically been trained on all of the MongoDB documentation data. So all of the answers are going to be basically exactly what someone that is a complete expert on the MongoDB documentation would answer your. So it's basically an AI that is an expert on MongoDB. All of the documentation it's been trained on all of the existing documentation. So if you have any questions, if it doesn't know the answer, it's because it's not in the documentation itself. All right. Cool. So let's jump into CRUD. Who here has heard of CRUD before? So we've explored the document model, and while you're answering, let me just like forge ahead here. So we've explored the document model before, and it's really like the heart of what MongoDB is and what sets it apart from other databases. We've also discussed how to model data, design schemas, and started to think about how the document model looks like in real world applications. But here, a schema isn't static. It exists to serve a living, breathing application, and that's something that's going to evolve with your data and your user needs. And that's where, at least at a foundational level, CRUD operations come in. So let's see if anyone has heard of CRUD before today. Yeah, and it looks like we got a ton of winners here. Yes, it is create, read, update, and delete. And these are going to be the primary functions that you use in order to interact with your data. And this is what brings your schema to life. It's how you store, retrieve, modify data as part of your application's workflow. So let's dive into them. So let's review the typical syntax for a query in MongoDB. We're always going to use a driver or a library to connect to MongoDB and query a database. So this way we could write code in our languages of choice and send and receive the objects directly in our program. So here we have a DB, then we have a collection, then we have an operator command, then we have a query filter, then we have options. Sorry, I'm like on a very small screen today, so it's harder for me to see some of the things on the slides. All right, so as you can see here, the collection is like the collection. The db.collection.find is being utilized here. So we're trying to find something in a specific collection within a specific database. Here we have the age that is going to be queried, and this is the filter that we're using. Then the projection, so that's like the options or the settings, including only the name and age in the fields of results. And then you're going to sort it by age in descending order, and then the limit here is that you're only going to return 10 different options. So now that we kind of know how it looks, we're going to start off with a create. And this is basically how you insert data into your database. So I'm going to show you how the MongoDB shell syntax in these, I'm going to show you the MongoDB shell syntax on these slides. But if you're not familiar with MongoDB shell or you don't want to use CLI, it's just basically a command line experience you can use to work with your database. You can also use the libraries, like I said before. You can use any of the major programming languages that are supported by MongoDB. Currently, those look like C, Java, Node.js, Go, Python. There's a couple of different other drivers in there that you can utilize as well. So pick and choose the one you're most familiar with and get started. So here, obviously, let's take a look at the way we insert data. We've got a query here, and the first, you're going to be in the current database. Then the next, you're going to be in the collection named authors. Then you're going to insert one document. So this insert one command is just for one document, but there's also an insert many command if you want to insert multiple documents at a time. Next, we're going to pass a new document to this method. And in this case, it's a document for the author, Jane Austen. And then the document includes her name and an array of IDs for the book she's written, and also an array of her aliases. So, oh, sorry. And also an array of her aliases. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to insert all of these things into your database. Now, if you wanted to read that same document from your database, this is how you would do it. Right, once again, you're in the current database. The collection is called authors. You're going to use the find query, which is just find one command essentially. You're going to use the find, which is going to find everything that has the name Jane Austen in it, but you could also use the find one command if you want to only retrieve one document. And then obviously you'll pass the query into the method. And in this case, you're going to bring in anything that has the name Jane Austen in it. Finally, if you wanted, not finally, but next, if you wanted to update, the first line is going to feel very familiar. Obviously, we've done this before. You're in the current database, the collection is named authors, and then you're going to use the update one method. So if you wanted to update multiple documents at a time, like with many of the other methods I've been showing you, you can use the update many in this case. But for now, we're just going to update one, and it's going to update the first document that MongoDB finds. So in this case, if I'm using update one to fix a typo, basically I'm looking for any document that has the misspelled name of Jane Austen, which in this case, spelling Austin with an I versus spelling Austin with an E. So here, obviously, we're filtering for that. And then the second parameter is going to be the modification that you want to apply. So it can be a document or a pipeline, but in this case, I'm just doing a simple $set. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that document with the misspelling. The $set is going to be the method that I use, and then I'm going to pass the correct name spelling into that method. And then finally, let's talk about delete. And again, this is going to be a very similar syntax. You're inside of the database. You're inside of the collection named authors. You're going to delete one, but you could also delete many. And you're going to delete anything that has the misspelling of the name Jane Austen in it. So that's really like, those are the basics of CRUD. Those are like, some of the primary methods you would be using when you're interacting with your data live and, doing so programmatically. It's pretty simple. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to jump into a live example with y'all. First things first, what I want to do is I want to make sure that y'all know how to set up your own cluster in your database. So I'm going to go ahead and share my tab here. I'm probably going to expand my screen so folks can see. So right now I'm signed into MongoDB Atlas. These are all the projects that I have and I've used in the past. What I'm going to do for now is I'm going to create a new project, and this is going to be called GHW API week 1125 for the year. And I'm not going to add any key value pair here. I'm just going to go ahead and move forward because this is going to be a really simple, really simple type of project. Here, obviously, I'm the person that is going to be the project owner. Let's go ahead and create the project now. And the project is essentially what's going to have all of your different clusters, all of your different like databases and collections and things like that inside of it. And here, once you create a new project, what you can do is you could actually spin up a free cluster. So I'm going to do that. So I've got this free cluster here that I can utilize. I've got different options, obviously. If you want to pay for it, you can. You have the option to do so, but I would suggest doing the free one for now since you're just going to be getting started. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to call this, what do I call this? What am I calling this? All right, we're going to call this test, capital T. And I'm just going to pick any service provider here. It's not really a big deal since it's for free. And then obviously here, what you're going to do is you're going to see that you have a database user, and then you're going to have the password. You saw my password. It's fine. I'm going to delete all this stuff later anyway. And so it's not that big of a deal, but I'll go ahead and take that password. I'm going to, hide, copy. And then I'm going to paste that into my end file in my other in my other screen. And here, now that you have like an actual, like, you have your IP address set, and now you have a database user that you've connected to the database itself, what you're going to do is you're going to choose a connection method. Oh, whoops, I got to create the database user first. Now you're going to choose a connection method. And what this really means is now you're going to choose which way you want to actually go in and leverage your actual sorry, you're going to go in and see how you're going to actually leverage your database, your existing cluster, your collection, using the language of choice. So here I'm going to use Node.js, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this as well. And in the background, I'm going to be going in and like adding it to a file that I have going, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. So give me a moment here while I get this set up. And after that, we're going to keep it rolling. All right. Okay. So my I have the start of my file set up in the background, but now you can see, like, we're going to go in, we're going to connect everything, and this is what it's going to look like. This is your cluster. This is the test cluster that I mentioned earlier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add data. So I'm going to create a database on Atlas, and this is the first thing I'm going to do. And what I want to call this one is I want to call it, and I'm just going to make sure I'm going to call this GHW API week. And then I'm going to call the collection test. You don't really need to do any of this stuff, but if you wanted to insert a document off the bat, you could ask for an example, and this is what it would look like. We're not going to do that one for the sake of this demo, but after I've done the database name and created the collection name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the database. All right. And now I am in the database. So this is what your first MongoDB database is going to look like. Obviously, there's nothing in it. I can insert a document here as well, but right now the database is GHW API week, and then the collection I have is test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new document into test, and it's going to be something very simple. For now, it's going to be a message, and then I'm going to say hello world, and then I'm going to insert it. So as you can see here, I've got hello world inserted. This is the object ID. This is the message. And what I'm going to show y'all is how you could actually go in and leverage that and read that document directly from your database. So let me share my screen here. Sorry, I'm not on my typical setup. Usually I would just, be switching from one screen to another. But for today, I only have the one screen. So I'll go ahead and share my VS Code window. I'm going to share this. And the first thing you can see here is this is the stuff I was kind of putting together in the background. And let me just make sure that this is clipped so you can see everything. All right, so I've got MongoDB in here. I've got the .m dependency that I'm referencing so I can reference my environment file. Then I've got the config instantiation for .env there. What I'm doing is I'm creating a URI object, or a variable called URI, which stores our actual MongoDB URI with the username plus the actual password for the DB itself. And then what I do is I create a new client using that URI. And here I have a variable where I'm storing the database itself, client.db, it's GHW API week, and then I'm storing the actual collection inside of a variable as well. So the database.collection is going to be test. That's all stuff that we already built. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to do npm y -init -y init, and what that's going to do is just going to create like a node program for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to npm install MongoDB as well. And can y'all see everything? Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Whoops. Here you go. Sorry. All right. So yeah, like just to scroll back up, I've got the client set up. I've got .m set up. I've got the variable, which is storing my URI. I've got a client that I'm creating with that URI using the MongoDB plugin, or sorry, the MongoDB dependency. And in here, I have a variable called database and collections referencing both the GHW API week database and then the test collection that we spun up. So I've just done npm-y init. So I've initialized a node program here. And then I've also gone in and installed MongoDB. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to npm install.env, because that is another dependency that I need since I'm using an environment file. And then now that that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my JSON file, and I'm going to put type, and this is going to be module. And this is just so you could transfer data from one, so that you can transfer data from one file to another. And like, you're gonna, if you're using JavaScript for this, if you're using Python, I don't think you need this. Obviously, your requirements.txt is not going to have that. But if you're using JavaScript, you will need that additional line in order to let the program know that these are actually modules and not a single script that you're running. All right. So now that we're all set up here, what I'm going to do is we have that single hello world document that we added into our file. And what I want to do is I want to go in and get that get that file and read it. So let me just scroll down here a little bit. I'm not sure if y'all are able to see this so well. I know my screen's a little bit small, but essentially I'm creating an async function. I have a query, which is find the message that says hello world inside of it. And then I'm creating a new variable called call, so short for collections. And I'm going into the collections variable that I instantiated here. And it's basically referencing the test collection that I've created. Then I'm going to find one, which is the query, which is the variable that I set up with the message hello world inside of it. Then I'm going to console log my results. So let's see what happens when we do that. And I'm in here. Let me just clear this real quick. So I'm going to do node index.js. And as you can see here, the object ID with hello world is coming in. And that was the same thing that we had from that was the same, basically the same document that we just built, or that we just inserted into the database into the collection that we just made. So that's how you would read from the database. So let me go ahead and comment that out. Oh, whoops. All right. So now we want to write something into the database, and I've created another function here as well. And I just did this, like, live coding is fun and all, but like honestly, I just didn't. I just wanted to make sure that everything worked for y'all. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm creating a write function, and obviously, same thing as before. I'm creating a variable called write, and then it has the message that I want to write into my database. Then I have a variable called message, which is basically using the method insert one, and then it's referencing that variable with the actual document that I want to insert into my collection. And then after that, I'm going to console log the message itself. So really, like, this is a very simple function that you could write yourself, but this is how you would programmatically insert a document into your MongoDB collection. And here you go. So as you can see here, it's acknowledged it as true, and it has the new object ID. And it's like, it's not displaying the actual document to me, but it is displaying it is telling me that the object exists inside of the database, which is good. And we could actually jump back into our MongoDB Atlas instance, and we could check that out. So let me go ahead and show y'all that real quick. I wish I had an extra screen. This would be so much cooler for y'all. All right. So here, as you can see, that's the object that we just created, and then the message that we just inserted into the test collection. So that's pretty cool. Why do you need the message variable for inserting? I just cleans it up. I could have just easily like inserted the object directly into that function, but I just like to clean it up with the variable. So it's really just a so it's really just a stylistic like choice. Here is, as you can see on the bottom here, that's going to be the new document that we just inserted into the database. So that's pretty cool. We're going to insert a bunch of different things. So we're going to do two more things. I'm going to show y'all, and then we're going to go into a couple of different other things on MongoDB. So let me stop sharing this right now, and then I will remember to share my screen this time, and it's going to be my window. Jumping back into MongoDB Atlas, add to stage, boom. All right. So this is the function that we just wrote. And that's a good question that you ask, like, why create the variable? It's because I don't want to just like drop this into, I could technically just take this and then just drop it in here and then console log it. Or I could just like take this await collections at like this entire thing and then just like console log the entire thing. But I wanted to clean it up for y'all and show y'all step by step how I'm doing it. So the next thing we're doing is we're going to use a write many function to write multiple documents into the collection. So here, obviously, I called it write many. So I'm storing this array inside of a variable called write, and then I am creating another variable called messages where I am using the method insert many to insert this entire variable. And like I said before, like you could do something like this if you wanted. You could take this entire thing here and you could just like instead of this, you could just do this, right? But I like to do it step by step to show y'all exactly what's happening. So that's essentially what I'm doing there. And then I'm going to console log that same variable messages. And then finally, it's going to catch any errors on the bottom. But let's see what that looks like real quick. Let me make sure I am running no data. Let me just clear this real quick. So it's at the top. There you go. Node index.js. And there you go. We have everything written into the database now. These are the object IDs. So it's acknowledged it is true. It's inserted 3. It's telling us exactly what's happening. And then these are the IDs for those things, for those like same documents. And now what we can do is, because we want to kind of see it inside of the console, we want to see how that looks inside of our terminal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a read many function, and then I'll show you everything on MongoDB side as well. So this is going to do the same thing. It's just going to take everything that's inside of the current collection, anything that isn't null. So this is what that $ne stands for. And then the limit is the projection is going to be anything with like, it doesn't matter if there's an ID as long as there's a message. We're going to take that, and then the const sample is going to be the collections.find, and then obviously inserting both the query and the limit into that find method. And then after that, we're just console logging everything. So let's do that one more time. And then once again, I'll get you to the top here, and then I will node index.js. Boom. And there it goes. It's displaying all of the things, the entire conversation that we had with ourselves. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Now that you've seen it live in action, which I think is pretty cool, I'll go ahead and jump back into MongoDB, stop screen, and I'm gonna share screen, and I'm gonna share this once again. And then you'll be able to see, it hasn't refreshed yet, but we'll just go ahead and hit refresh here. And let me add it. And you'll see all of those. Ooh, oh yeah, there you go. All of those messages are actually inserted into our database. Let me just pause for questions really quick. I know we're running up on time. I would like to connect with you on LinkedIn. Please share your ID. Yeah. Let me just drop it in chat here for y'all before I forget. I know it's a little off topic, but yes, if you want to connect with me, more than happy to do so. Here you go. I don't know why I didn't memorize that. It's easy enough to memorize. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn if y'all are interested. Happy to connect with any of you. All right, so would like to connect with you, and then Twitter ID. I don't use Twitter, unfortunately, but you can add MLH on Instagram and on TikTok. At MLHacks for Instagram, and then at Major League Hacking for TikTok. All right, so insert method only returns the newly inserted object. So the insert method returns the newly inserted object by default. No, you have to console log it. So I console logged that object, and what it did is it just gave me the ID. It didn't give me the actual message that I inserted or the actual like field value pair that I inserted. It only gave me the ID. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know I'm trying to go fast because I want to answer everyone's questions, but I also know that we have a limited amount of time. So I apologize. If you want, you can go back and basically rewatch the recording. It'll be made available to you. Sorry if you can't find the step where you connected the DB with VS. So basically, what's going to happen is I didn't show that because it had like sensitive information that I ended up showing to y'all anyway. So next time I'm going to take that into consideration. Basically, what I did was I used the connect button, and then it allowed me to connect with a driver. And then I selected the programming language of choice. Let's see if I can kind of redo that here. Let's go into Explorer. So basically what I did was when I was inside the cluster, I chose connect, and then I chose a driver. And then I went in here and I chose Node.js, and I took this, and you could either, you could view the full code sample, which is going to show you the password or not. But basically, this is what I used to instantiate a new client inside of so to basically create a URI variable, which I then use to instantiate a new client for MongoDB. And then that's basically how it went. All right. What should we be doing in GHW API week? Yes, let's jump into that really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and share this tab. Now that we've looked at our sample data or example app, yeah, we encourage you to continue learning about MongoDB. We want you to do so during Global Hack Week, and you can obtain a ton of different MongoDB skills badges. So with technology always evolving, it's going to be important for y'all to showcase your skills and validate that you have those skills. I was talking about, potentially going in. Can y'all hear me out there? Sorry, I just got a message that said my audio cut out, but hopefully y'all can still hear me. Okay, good. Awesome. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to learn how to do anything with databases, you could choose any database you want. But at the end of the day, choosing ones that are already very prevalently used in the industry are going to be very helpful for you, especially when you're, because you have a limited time. So you need to be sort of picky about the skills that you're choosing to learn and at what time you're learning them. Right now, I think it's a perfect time for you to learn MongoDB because you have someone here that's teaching you, and also it's a free resource that you can go in and start getting hands-on with immediately. So we encourage you to go in, check out the MongoDB skills badges, and they're all linked inside of the challenges for Global Hack Week right now. And just having been here, you're probably going to already be fully equipped to get the basic skills badge like right off the bat. Basically, what it looks like is it's a like they give you some information for you to read through. You can probably bypass that at this point for the basic skills because I've already shown you that. And then you'll basically answer 10 questions about MongoDB. You're going to answer 10 questions about the document model, etc. I've collected most of the badges that I'm asking y'all to collect for Global Hack Week, so they're not that difficult to do. Definitely something that's going to be worth your time. You can get the skills badge, and then you can go in and actually upload them to LinkedIn, and then you'll also have the availability to display them on your CRUD account. So here's how you can get yours. So just prepare and watch the short informative videos, do the skill check, and then the entire process is just designed to be completed within 60 to 90 minutes. But I think y'all can get it done much quicker than that because you already have this background, and it's fast and free, like I mentioned before. So there's a ton of different things that you could do. So I would recommend, obviously, you could do the MongoDB for students. You could also do the beginner's badge, I believe. And obviously, if you're interested, a lot of the things that we touched on today to check out are going to be the relational to document model and then the CRUD operations skills badges. And after this, you're also going to be able to join Ryan Swift on Monday on a workshop on vector search. So that's definitely going to be something that y'all want to check out. So that's pretty much it. I've got a minute for Q&A. I know I answered a lot of questions earlier. All right, let's see here. Can we go with Python? Yes, absolutely. You could use any of those drivers that are available to you. Obviously your code is going to change a little bit, and some of the requirements that you have on your end are going to change a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's all the same principle. So definitely feel free to dive in. I would love to see that. And then, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. You've been very complimentary of me today. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being here. And all right, streams are on MLA's YouTube channel. Yes, all of the recordings are going to be there. Once again, please make sure that you register. Check out the challenges, and I'm going to drop the link here for you. And once again, my name is Rosendo from MLH. I've had such a great time doing this for y'all. I'm not in my typical setup, so I'm glad that everything worked out. I know there were some screen share issues, but I'm glad that we overcame them together. And I hope that you overcome any of your future challenges together as well, because that's what MLH is a community, and it's there for you. Awesome. If y'all need the slides, they are in the MongoDB channel. Just scroll up. You're going to find the same slides from last time, and you can go through them at your own pace, especially if you missed anything from earlier. And once again, rewatch the recording, but don't take my password because I'm deleting it. I appreciate y'all. And I hope y'all have a great time. Coming up next, we've got Cloudflare. Someone you may be familiar with, his name is Harshal, a former member of the MLH coaching staff. So definitely check out that workshop because it's going to be great. And until next time, I will see y'all later. Have a good one.